All right, folks, you know you're in for a treat when you hear that tune because it's time for another week of the Rec Poker Podcast. I have the best freaking job in the world. I get to hang out here every Monday night and talk to my friends about poker because that's what we do here at Rec Poker. For those of you who don't know, Rec Poker is a largely volunteer-based organization. Most of what we do here is free, so we have to thank our sponsors like the Running Aces Hotel, Racetrack, and Casino. More on them in just a moment. We've got an exciting guest coming today. We'll be talking with John Barrows, who's the tournament manager over at Running Aces, and we're going to pick his brain about the operational side of things. But I also have to thank our premium members because we've got over 1,100 free community members here at Rec Poker, and we do so much free stuff: the home games, the Discord channel, the forums, Twitch streams, free videos on YouTube, the podcast. Obviously, there's a whole bunch of great free stuff that comes on. But our premium membership is really what we depend on the support of our premium members, is what I'm trying to say, to make all the magic happen here at Rec Poker. And so that $15 a month unlocks all sorts of amazing training videos, training material from other premium training sites around the world, social events, our archive of training material, discounts on some great tools. We're going to be giving away a subscription to Range Trainer Pro on the podcast later tonight if one of our premium members wins the food bank draw. Just a lot of perks to being a premium member for $15 a month. And so I want to thank our newest premium member, Danny Wood. Danny became a premium member the easiest possible way by tuning into the podcast here on Monday nights on YouTube at 7:30 Eastern. We do it every week, and we do a prize draw at the end of the show every single week. All you have to do is show up for free and have fun with the group here. And what group is that, you're asking? I'm so glad you asked. It's the RECing Crew. You get used to hearing me. My name's Jim Reid. I'm your host tonight. But you only get used to me because they put me in front of the mic on Mondays. I'm just part of the crew, the leadership panel here that makes everything work. And we couldn't do it without everyone here on the RECing Crew. If you want to find out more about me or other RECing Crew members, you can go to rec.poker/crew. But listen up because you're going to meet a few heavy hitters right now here on the show.
Well, I guess we're leading off with the lightest of hitters, but I'm Chris Jones. You can find me 5B5 on Twitter or 5x5 in the Poker Stars home game.
And I'm John Somsky. I am Poker Geek MN everywhere.
My name's Joe Coolis. You can find me on Twitter at JoeCoolPhD, cool with a K, or Elvita11 on the forums and the home game.
And I'm Rob Washam, and I'm Rabman50 just about everywhere.
Now, as you may have realized, it's a different crew of RECing Crew members here. We kind of rotate through a lot of our active members for the show. And I'm just so grateful that some of these other folks are screwing up the audio cues to make me look good because I'm trying my best here, folks. I say it's not a bit. We're all trying our best. So enough said. So much thanks to our premium members, to our RECing Crew members, to everyone who contributes in all the ways that they do to make the magic happen here at Rec Poker. So I'm very excited to be welcoming John Barrows back to the show. John, you've been on before. You've been a fixture at Running Aces for a long time now, and we've seen the poker room and sort of the poker division grow and flourish under your stewardship there. Since we last had you on the show, the world's changed a little bit. There's been a bit of a pandemic. There's been some evolution in the live game. I don't know. We're going to talk a little bit about some regulatory aspects of running a poker room. We're going to talk about some of the operational aspects of tournament structures, running tournaments, the give and take that goes on in the poker room. But first of all, let's just say thank you so much for coming back on the Rec Poker Podcast, Mr. John Barrows.
Yeah, appreciate it. I'm glad to be back. We've enjoyed a partnership with Rec Poker for a long time, and it's something we've experienced now for about 6-7 years, I suppose. And we love the crowd. And we actually, I think we were one of the pioneers of kind of the whole idea of what Rec Poker really can be. Our casino, what we've structured for tournaments, really was about that, about rec players being able to level up into multi-day events and still not not have to worry about major bankroll issues. We were that breeding ground for that. And so hopefully it's a good connection for your audience as well. And I love the fact that you've grown to be so worldwide in this case. When we start talking Australia and stuff, that's great.
It's true. It's true. But John, that's not hyperbole. John and the crew there at Running Aces took a big chance on us way back in the day when Steve was just starting the podcast. I say sort of Steve starting the podcast in his basement. I don't know if it was actually in his basement or in his living room or his home office or something like that. But John and the folks there at Running Aces really were a big part of our story coming together. And it's been great partnering with you guys over the years. We do live events there, which are super fun. I've flown down for our RecPoker weekend, which we did last year. I'm already looking forward to visiting again this year. And I think it was the attic, says Chris. I think you're right, Chris. I think it was the attic at that point. So first of all, just thanks, John, because who knows what would have happened to RecPoker if we didn't have that kind of support early on. And so we're always going to have a soft spot in our heart for you. And I think you guys treat poker and the fun of poker the right way. It's just like you say, parlaying folks into the kind of tournaments that they might not ordinarily be able to play in, bringing them up in the game, exploring the fun parts of the game, and having great, game integrity along the way. Why don't we talk about that a little bit? Sort of, what do you feel like are your criteria for success as a poker room? Like, how do you know if you're doing a good job with the poker room at Running Aces? Like, how do you measure what feels good at the end of the week or at the end of the month when you know you're doing a good job?
It's a really good question. What kind of measures success on our end? Obviously, volume is certainly that measure, but that's the easy thing to talk about. Reality is, for me, I look at, are the customers engaged with what we're offering, and are they asking for more? I think of things like if customers aren't giving you feedback, they don't really care. I think when customers give feedback, they care. They like what they like lots of what's happening, and they might want to see other things. So we've really tried to, at least myself, I've really tried to focus on being open and asking for feedback and being open-minded to feedback about things we can offer. So from specifically from a player perspective, listen to them about tournament ideas. Specifically, tournament ideas are a big driver of that. So that's where I get involved. So I think that's one thing we've done really well is listen to our guests, and then we engage with them online. We have a very active Twitter and Facebook presence. And, like this last weekend, yesterday, I'm a little hoarse because I worked 23 hours. I worked 23 hours yesterday, and between yesterday and Saturday with our pot of gold tournament. So
yes,
long couple of days, certainly worth it. And we, on day 2, we do a lot of day 2 reporting on site live as it's going. And, our people that follow us on social media love it, and they follow along, they respond. They're looking for that action. That's one of the things that I think you can tell that we can take a lot of pride in at Running Aces, is that we've really engaged our guests, and they're looking for it. So when they don't get it, they really actually respond. They're looking for those updates. So, and I track the metrics. I'll look at, when I go in tomorrow, I'll look at the Twitter numbers, I'll look at the Facebook numbers, and I'm always generally really just wowed. Like, wow, everybody really likes this. Even if they're not clicking through always, I'm getting a lot of looks, and it really matters. So, long answer, but that's, the more engagement we get, and from even if it's not play, more engagement, like people watching, watching this or taking part in this, in things like this podcast. Those are great metrics for us to use to find out if what we're doing is working.
Yeah, I love it. And I'll remind our listeners, if you've got any questions for John, you don't get many opportunities to speak to the professionals on that side of the desk in the poker industry. So if you're watching live in YouTube, feel free to type your questions in before we do our food bank draw at the end. And obviously, anyone here on the panel, just unmute and I'll call on you to jump in. Chris, I see you have freed yourself from the
Yeah,
VPs.
no, I was just going to jump in, John, and just say the coverage this weekend was fantastic. So whoever is doing that, I don't know who's doing that for you, but I just thought it was. I mean, it's very rare for a poker. I mean, it's usually just kind of like, here's a final table photo and somebody won, and like, but like you really got a sense of what's going on in the event and some back and forth. So it was fun to follow, and kudos to whoever's doing it, because it is if you're not able to be there but you're kind of curious and you know a lot of the players, it's really great to be a part of that and sort of have a sense of what's going on. So thanks for doing that.
Yeah, of course. I'll give a shout out right now to one of the people at Running Aces. One of my tournament directors, his name is Dave Margulies. Dave is I don't know if some of you guys probably know Dave, very active poker player, loves to play a lot of tournament poker. And he runs our Tuesday night tournament for us. And he also does all of our day two reporting for any main event, any multi-day event we've got. He does the day two reporting for. And he does just fantastic work. He stays on top of things. He's good at updating chip counts. He tries to provide as much live, quick, video content if he can. It's not always easy to get because sometimes things happen. We're not at the point where we want to start pausing players and saying, "Hey guys, wait, let us take a video." We want to catch it in live action, live moment. But he really does. He hustles, and you can tell the players, the people that, like you said, the people that are watching really do appreciate it. We get a lot of good feedback on it. And it's an expense for us to do this. And I can tell you, my boss he's been happy enough with it that he's said, just do it, make sure it happens. So he's okay with the cost, and because he knows it really drives results. So we'll keep spending that money, and it's definitely worth it to us, and it's definitely worth it to our guests.
Yeah, well, it looks great. And if folks want to check out the recent coverage, the hashtag is #AcesPoker. Yep. And we'll also put the links in for Running Aces on Twitter and Facebook in the show notes here for the show. So if you're listening along, you should be able to just click on through. Joe Cool, what do you have to add today, my friend? Nice to see you.
Well, I just want to say that I've only been to Running Aces once because I'm actually living out on the coast now and grew up in Wisconsin, never got close enough. But I want to say that the one tournament that I was at there at the RecPoker event was extremely well run, and I was tickled to note that you even reported the results to Hendon Mob. So because I had a score there, I'm like, I got a Hendon Mob score. But you guys run a great place there. I was impressed.
Well, it's funny you bring that up. Hendon Mob, for a long time, I actually wasn't super. That's one of the things that we missed on a little bit. We used to report Hendon Mob results like every other week or so, and I kind of had, only in the last probably year or so I come to realize how important that is to people that are cashing. And so we made a change, and we report daily now. So every time when our tournament's done, we send our results to Hendon Mob immediately. So whenever they post them, they're generally posting within a couple days. They're pretty good about that. And I think it's amazing how that's just another example of engagement beyond the felt that I think really matters. And, so I think that's what anybody that's listening to this, I think they can take that to heart as well. This is all part of being in a poker community, is watching, listening. It's not just pitching cards back and forth and seeing who wins a pot.
Yeah, I just want to echo your statement about that, because I think that people underestimate how important these moments, because poker is kind of a lot of times you end up playing it yourself, right? Your friends aren't as into it as you are. And to be able to point to somebody and say, look, on this site that people mention, I have my name there. It's a big deal. And, there are other things I've done in my life, but I kind of value that Hendon mob listing.
Well, I've got a few myself.
Yeah.
I've got 3 or 4 on there. I was actually, we had the TDA summit in, it was July of 2022. So July of last year, we got the new TDA rules that we all went through and out in Las Vegas. And then we actually play a tournament. Well, I actually happened to chop the tournament with a player for all the tournament directors. So, which was kind of fun. So I got that. That was my last Hendon mob result. It's the last tournament I actually played in because unfortunately, I don't get a lot of opportunity to play anymore. So I really look forward to those moments when I can play, but they're unfortunately kind of few and far between. And that's the downside of working in the industry is you lose a lot of opportunity to play. So I have to live vicariously for all you guys when you're playing and watch. Hopefully you guys are having fun, and I just kind of watch along and make sure everybody's having fun, or at least try to.
Well, this is a pretty good group to live vicariously through when it comes to the pleasure taken in poker. At least I think that you're going to be calibrating well if this is the crowd that you're getting your fix from, John.
Absolutely.
John Somsky, what do you have queued up in front?
I was just going to kind of reiterate on what John had said already, and particularly at the lower stakes games that recreational players tend to play, it's not life-changing money that you're going to be earning. So you're really playing for the bragging rights or for a sense of accomplishment. So, having a place that is doing some level of, tournament reporting on the day twos, or is making sure that they're mentioning the winners of the tournaments on Facebook or whatever or putting the stuff up to Hendon Mob, all of that, kind of feeds the community, and it gets on itself, because then you can tell your friends, hey, look at what I did here and you didn't, and then they'll come back and try to beat them, and it's just, that's the way it goes.
Absolutely.
It's true.
Love it.
So, John, we're talking, I know you've got an MSPT series coming through at some point soon. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about tournament structures. Last time you were on the show, we talked about Rake, and we talked about a few of the other aspects of running a profitable and successful poker room. I want to talk a little bit about structures and how you kind of vary them between the events that you have. What are the factors that motivate using a particular structure over a different one? And is there something about the MSPT series that sort of factors into that conversation as well? I guess I'm just going to set you up in very vague general language there and see what happens.
Sure. So kind of the first thing, talking about structure, when I think of structure from a daily event versus a multi-day event, it does change things quite a bit. Multi-days, we can get into obviously deeper structures, longer play. Players that play multi-day know they're going to, ahead of time, they know they're in for the long grind. And even there, you can make tweaks, but still it's generally you're planning, when all of our multi-days are 2-day style events. Day one, you play, then day two, you finish up. And we always plan for it to be anywhere from 8 to 10 hours of play each day. And that's kind of about what the structure ends up lending to itself. Daily events are a little bit different. Daily events is where you really vary kind of how you build structure, at least what I've found with our players. And it's, I think John touched on it a little bit about not like being life-changing money, especially when you're doing really lower buy-in tournaments. And one of the other things I've discovered is, I think kind of this, players who are a little more advanced always want more structure. They always say, I want more time. I want more chips. I want more levels, all of these things. And yeah, that's actually great to some players. Most of our players, and I think this is kind of holds true for a lot, most of our players are focused on what their buy-in is and how much time are they going to have to commit. I have a big majority of our daily players really want that tournament to be a 4 to 5 hour kind of event. And that's kind of what they want to commit to. And that kind of surprised me. I always just assumed, now I've known this for a while, but I always assumed that, well, everybody wants to play the best event they possibly can. No, there's a lot of players that actually want to play 4 to 5 hours and call it good. They want, they want to go home. They've got live, they've got all these other things. So they want to be entertained for a short amount of time, maybe win a few bucks and then brag, hey, I won a poker tournament and get out of there. So a lot of the structures that we build are in that mind of giving players enough play early on and then making sure they're out of there at a reasonable amount of time. You always still then, and then I try to mix in, obviously for us, one of our most popular tournaments is our double stack, but it does definitely bring out a different kind of player. It's our biggest structured tournament of the week. It typically runs 7 to 8 hours when we do run it. We run it actually we're going to start running them on Tuesdays now. We've been running them on Thursdays. We're going to have them both on Tuesday and Thursday. And then we also run them on Sundays. Those are typically about an 8-hour tournament. So we sprinkle those in as well for the players that do want that longer structure. So I think from an operator perspective, it's all about mixing and matching, making sure you have enough to offer to everybody. When we first came out of the pandemic, we were only offering kind of 1 to 2 tournaments. So some of the players were kind of forced to play things that I don't know that they were necessarily comfortable with. We've since that point, we've brought back some lower buy-in tournaments with lower, shorter structures, and the volume has just shot through the roof. And that's just a great example of, I cranked the structure down for sure, but the players didn't care. They got what they wanted. They got a lower buy-in and they got that time frame that was working for them. So, they want to have some fun, and good for them. I love it.
When it comes to structures, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's basically the 3 things that you can change. You can change the starting stack. You can change the number of levels, like whether you include every level or skip levels of blinds. And then you can change the duration of the levels. And those are kind of like the big 3 that get into determining the length of the tournament. Is that roughly true?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. The biggest one is the length of level. Mm-hmm. Far and away, if you want to plan on how long a tournament runs, length of level is going to really drive that. Chip stack actually doesn't have as much of an impact as you think. Chip stacks are a great way to drive some interest, but in the end, it's the length of level and then the amount of levels. So I've tried to keep chip stack a little bit less important. Most of our chip stacks they're all pretty much the same, but it is length of level, number of levels, and as the bigger, the longer you get in, the more you start, the more levels you add in, the longer that tournament goes. I've got some dailies now. I'll give you an example. I run a Tuesday morning tournament. It's our cheapest buy-in tournament. It's $75. It's the cheapest buy-in tournament in the state. And most of our tournaments, we've been pretty player friendly in terms of structure, and not even starting antes until level 6. This one we start antes on level 3, and we kind of crank it up pretty good. And that's a great example of where we could tweak and make it that 4 to 5 hour block and still make it work for everybody. So that's a great question, Jim, about the 3 factors to structuring a tournament. And then when I'm pushing for anything, it's always length of level, then the number of levels.
Great. Yeah, and if I can jump in, actually, there is sort of, and this kind of relates to a thing that's been going on, I think, in the tournament world, especially at the higher stake level. Like the 4th thing that you could potentially adjust is the amount of time that players have to make a decision. And you start to see at the 10K and the 5K buy-in levels, the WPT and the EPT and some of these really prestigious high-level tournaments, they've started to implement shot clocks. And I one part of me is like really like kind of like interested in that. Like I like to see the game speed up, but I also kind of worry about the players who are newer to the game and that being like a barrier or an intimidation to them of like coming there. It's already intimidating to come in and maybe play your first tournament in a card room, but now I've got to do this within 30 seconds and I got to make every decision when I, like, so what are your thoughts about shot clocks in general? Do you think running aces will ever think about implementing them at maybe a higher buy-in level? Do you think they have a place at any buy-in level? What are some of your thoughts about shot clocks?
It's a great question. And actually at the TDA summit, we actually played with a shot clock. So it's the first time I'd ever experienced it. And I have mixed feelings about shot clocks in general. A lot of what you talked about, I kind of share some of those thoughts. It's not necessarily a friendly approach for a rec player or somebody who is intimidating, because the last thing we need to do is, we got pressure on you besides the fact that you've got eight other souls who are trying to take all your chips and you're trying to avoid those guys. Oh yeah, by the way, act. So, to me, I have a little bit of hesitancy with it. What I experienced in our TDA summit tournament with the shot clock was, it was actually kind of hard for the dealers to even manage. I think conceptually, as a concept, it's fine. I don't know if we're there on the technology side and the management side yet to actually use it and be good at it. It's an ambitious move. And for bigger events, some of those bigger buy-in events with more of an experienced field, I certainly would be more than willing to give that a try. But as an operator, I am very concerned about how to properly implement it without there being a lot of glitches. And it's just, dealers already have a lot of work to do. Now we've just added one more task for them, and this is actually a pretty important task. And what I experienced in the tournament I played in was some dealers forgot to start the shot clock. So all of a sudden it's 30 seconds have gone, and also now they're pressing the button, and I don't fault them at all. This is intended for them to be experimental. So this is a great example of that's something I would want to have ironed out before I even tried to implement it. I know one of my predecessors in my role, who's still at running aces in the form of a casino manager, his name's Tristan Wilberg, and some of you guys might know Tristan. Really great poker mind. And, at one point he had looked at getting shot clock equipment. Just couldn't feasibly, it wasn't a cost so much as just feasibly make sure it was implemented properly. So from our perspective, I don't have any plans to do it. It is definitely, so everybody knows, it is definitely a topic that is very, very near and dear to Matt Savage's heart. He's the executive director, at the TDA, and obviously part of the World Poker Tour. And he is a big proponent of speeding up the game, and in part because long drawn out play he believes is not friendly to the recreational player. And he's right. So one of his, this is one of his thoughts, is to get this moving. Great idea. Implementation, I think, is true implementation's a ways off. Doesn't mean it won't happen someday, but at this point, I don't know when that's going to be.
Joe?
Do you see the kind of tanking that really, when people get all up in arms about implementing a shot clock at the vast majority of the tournaments that you're running? I don't really see it where I play that I would ever think to need to have a shot clock, and social pressure is usually enough to get people to play fast enough. But are you seeing that makes you think that it should be in place?
I don't see a lot of that at all. Matter of fact, I see so little of it that's one reason I haven't really pushed for it, is because our players, even rec players, for the most part, they just, they play at a pretty reasonable pace. I I've had a few incidents where I'll have a player who simply just does not move in an appropriate manner for anything. Doesn't matter whether it's he can be under the gun first to act, on one of the first levels, and he just takes 45 seconds to look at his cards. To me, those are isolated incidents. A good tournament director deals with that and gets those players moving. And that's the approach I've taken, is where I've actually, the most extreme example I can recall, I actually put a player who was repeatedly causing, delaying things, in part to antagonize the entire table. I actually put that player on a permanent 5-second clock. And I hate doing things like that. But in this case, it was extreme. And it was, every time you get cards, you've got 5 seconds. Unless you call time, I'll give you, again, I'm not even getting into time banks or anything like that shot clock tournaments have. Those are rare examples. I think a tournament director has to manage that as it comes up. So, Joe, I think to your point, I'm not seeing a lot of it. I think when tournament directors do see it, if they're doing the right thing and manage it individually on an individual basis, to me, that should be good enough.
And I think it really is the outliers, the bad actors that are trying to be dicks about it that we really have to protect against. Like, I think most people, the rule isn't there for people that are just genuinely unsure or need more time. I think it's the people that are intentionally stalling and dragging out the game. So you need a mechanism for the dealers and for the floor to be able to legitimately say, hey, you're working outside the system. This isn't the spirit of the rule. Pick it up, bud. And so how much autonomy do dealers have in that kind of a situation? Or is it always, let's get a floor person over here to make a ruling about when it's appropriate to kind of hurry some people along?
So I can't speak for other houses, although I'm guessing this is pretty common across the board. At Running Aces, any request for a clock from a player is an automatic floor call.
Yeah.
And so the process for us is, I'm going to get called over, and my dealer will, the first question I will ask, depending on the game. So if it's tournament, it's not quite as important, because in tournaments, anybody that was dealt a hand is eligible to call a clock. Like, for example, in our cash games, the only people that are eligible to call a clock are people that currently have active hands. If you don't have an active hand, that's tough. That's the way it is.
And just for our listeners at home, if you're in a tournament, there's an incentive to just move the hand along. Blinds are going up. Everyone at the table is affected by the rate at which the hands are played. In a cash game, you're kind of just wait until the next hand. The next hand is going to be the same no matter when it starts. So that's why that rule basically exists.
Yeah, absolutely. And so tournaments are a little bit different. So the first question I always ask my dealer is, A, who called the clock? B, has the player had sufficient time to act? What the definition of sufficient time is, it's kind of hard to tell. Again, sometimes, like in these big main events, they're playing for thousands of dollars, and what is sufficient time? 30 seconds? Is it a minute? Is it 5 minutes? Rarely do I have a dealer, when a clock is called, have I had a dealer say, no, they have not had sufficient time. It's happened. I've had a couple times where I've come over, I asked the two questions, and the dealer simply responded and said, nope, they've only had about a minute. Okay. And then at that point, I'll make the determination whether a minute's enough or not. Is it a player that has had clock called on them before? Things like that. So all of the information comes into play, but most of the time that the response from my dealer is, yes, they've had sufficient time. Boom, we're into the 30-second countdown.
Yep. And so if you're listening at home, you get a sense of how important it is as a player at the table to sort of be paying attention to this kind of thing. I guess, John, let me ask you, do we want the players to be like policing this themselves, or is it really a question? Because ultimately the dealer's not going to call clock, right? Like it falls to another player at the table to call the clock. Is that right?
100%. I mean, players have paid for the time. How they use it is kind of their business as far as we're concerned. So it is the responsibility of the player to, in this case, move the game along. However, again, once they've notified us, then that's when we take over. So all they have to do is notify us. And that's what the point of calling the clock is for. That's their notification. A dealer, if I have a player that is repeatedly stalling, dealers will notify me. And that's when we can start putting permanent clocks on things, on players. Again, even with that, though, I'm hesitant. One of the experiences I've had is if I've had to put somebody on a permanent 30-second clock, guess what they do? They take 30 seconds every time.
Right.
So we got to, I'm careful about doing things like that too. I would rather, if I get somebody that, for me personally, if I get somebody that's continuing to abuse the clock, I'll let them play their hand. Then I'm going to give them a penalty of hands or multiple hands, whatever it takes. So I would rather just do that rather than putting somebody on a permanent clock. In part because I don't want to babysit people. And I've got tournaments, I've got anywhere from 50 to 100 players to manage at any given point, all my dealers. Last thing I need to do is watch John Somsky sit there and look at his cards for, in a minute and a half. No offense, John. I'm kidding. I pick on John because I've known John here at Running Aces for years. So
yeah. Nice.
He's on a permanent clock with us too. It's
there you
go. Let's go.
Yeah, I'm actually probably worse on our home games than I am at Running Aces. I get distracted by the TV when I'm at home, whereas at Running Aces,
Right.
So that actually, I know there's a couple good questions in the YouTube chat here, but this brings up a question I want to ask John. So, you talk about sort of like the consequences. So you might, if the clock runs out, their hand's killed, their hand's dead. It's a fold, for instance. But you also talk about having them like take a seat or take a few, play a penalty round or something like that. What are some of the ways that you can reinforce these rules, or some of the consequences that you can put in front of players if they're not playing by the rules? So I think the common one that most people are familiar with is like one round where you don't get dealt cards. Is that kind of like a go-to? And can you speak a little to what that infrastructure is like?
Yeah, sure. So penalizing players is obviously, for me, it's always that last resort move. I reserve those kind of things for egregious moves, or obviously outside of the realm kind of things like swearing or threatening or things like that. Obviously, those are going to get significant penalties. But when it comes to like actual play style penalties, I'm pretty hesitant to do it without a serious conversation, short of something egregious. This weekend is a great example. I had to issue one. I didn't have to, but I did issue one penalty, a 3-hand penalty, so a relatively small penalty, to a player who showed their cards to another player with a live hand. It obviously caused a lot of consternation at the table. It is, he didn't realize that, he should have realized that other players were still active. He just was not really thinking about it. I issued him the penalty and he handled it fine. He totally understood. He apologized. But because of this is a pretty egregious act in a pretty significant tournament, at that point, I felt the penalty was necessary. And a lot of times when you do things like that, you get the table on notice too. So, it's once you start doing things like that, most players know you're serious because of things like that. And you don't really get you get many issues after that point, excuse me. I'll share another fun example with you, that you guys will appreciate. So I mentioned Dave Margulies, my tournament director, earlier. Funny story with Dave. This is probably 4 or 5 months ago. It's one of Dave's off days, and outside of myself, pretty much anybody that works in the poker room can play in their off time at running aces. So Dave came up and played one of the morning tournaments that I happened to be running. I had a big all-in hand, 3, 4, 5 ways or something. I've been waiting to do this, and Dave's got pocket aces. He stands up, spikes his cards on the table, has some fun with it. He's yelling. They're all having fun. Well, Dave, because he spiked his cards, and cards are plastic. This can happen. It's really weird, but one of the corners broke off. This is somebody I consider a friend. It's one of my tournament directors and somebody I value greatly at running aces. And when the hand was over, I issued him a penalty. Dave, you broke one of my cards. I did. I gave him a penalty on the spot, and in part because I would give that to anybody.
Yeah,
and it's important for the players to know that there are things that are crossing the line, regardless whether you like it or not. And I know it wasn't done maliciously. He just did it, and it just was bad luck on his part. In this case, everybody kind of got a chuckle out of it. Dave got a chuckle out of it, and then I switched the card out. It's good. It's one of those things that I learned many years ago in a previous life. I was a supply chain manager with a very large retailer. If you are from Minnesota, you could probably figure out which one. There's only a couple of them. We used to get feedback from our employees all the time, and we always had one question on there about dealing with problem employees. And we were always 50-50 on responses. We always just assumed it was because, we're dealing with problem employees too hard. And then we'd go out and ask the people themselves, and they'd say, no, you're not dealing with them enough. And it's amazing. And it's the same thing in poker. Tournament directors, floors, whoever's in a leadership role, most of the other players appreciate when you deal with a problem on the spot, even if it's something small. And so I think for the rec players, especially, to kind of help them with that intimidation factor, getting penalties out there for players who are doing stupid stuff or, things like that, that's okay. I know if I've got a player who's who I can tell is green, we don't penalize them. We coach them. We try to coach them about, things you're doing. Hey, I know you want to act. A lot of guys act out of turn because they're just, I'm ready to go. Hey, whoa, look at that. I got this. I want to play. Never going to penalize a guy for doing that. I want them to have fun. And, I think that's the balance between knowing what a player is doing and understanding their situation and trying to empathize with them a little bit versus, just constantly laying down a hammer. And, hopefully I think most operators are the same way.
And I think the players really do respect and appreciate when you're clear with that and consistent, and when you're applying it to your friends as well as to the ne'er-do-wells. I think, and the people that are good players and good members of your room, they're gonna understand why you're laying it on them as well, because you kind of have to set these good examples, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
And people, I do think people respect that.
Absolutely.
So one thing, if folks, because I know some of our listeners may be playing home games or online, they don't have a lot of experience playing in an actual card room. Could being on a 1-round penalty, could that ever benefit someone if they were near a bubble or something, and they were just are they still having to put in antes and blinds as the action goes past them? Is it just you go take a bathroom break for 3 hands or something? What if people don't know what exactly does that mean? They just sit there, they don't get cards, they can't play. But what happens if they would otherwise have to put chips in? Are they committed to doing that anyway with no cards, or what happens in that situation?
So when we issue a penalty in tournament poker, I have them get up from the table. I tell them why I'm issuing them the penalty. I tell them when they are eligible to play again, where the button position will be. So I tell them when the button is in this spot is when you're eligible to play again, and then they must vacate the table area. So, and what is vacating table area? In my definition, that means far enough away that you could not observe the action or talk to players. So If that means go to the bathroom or go to the bar, whatever you got to do, that's my expectation. The player is still dealt in. Per TDA, all hands are, anybody with a live stack is dealt a hand, regardless of their situation, whether they're at the table, whether they're not at the table. And then any blinds that they get they're still responsible to pay. So if they're not at the table, the dealer is authorized to take the chips as necessary, or most of the time the player will just grab them for them and we'll put the blinds out. And that's, yeah. So in the case of the penalty that I had to issue on, was it Saturday? I think it was Saturday. On Saturday, even though it was only a 3-hand penalty, and I'll admit, I don't take any consideration about position into consideration at all. So if they're getting penalized, I don't even look at where the spot is until I tell them what the penalty is. Then I look at the spot and said, this is when you can come back in. In this case, it was only a 3-hand penalty. The previous hand he had played, he was under the gun. So he missed his big blind, his small blind, and his button. Obviously, pretty important positions in tournament poker. So, while it was only a 3-hand penalty, it's about the most impactful 3-hand penalty a guy could have. And again, he handled it fine. He understood, apologized, and no issues after that. But and it was early enough in the tournament that it obviously didn't make much of a difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. That's really good. I appreciate that. Joe.
So I'm a psychologist, and one of the things that I know is that if you mix stress, alcohol, and money together, you're going to get some unusual behaviors on the part of individuals. And in the same way that there's a certain question that you always ask an ER doc about the weirdest thing that they've seen, and I won't get into that here. What's the weirdest thing you've seen out of the people playing cards in running aces?
Stress, alcohol, and money. Is there any of that goes on at a casino? Wow. Okay. There's the one that will always stick in my mind. And this is many, many years ago, during an MSPT event, and I was actually dealing at the time. And I'm on a different table, and I'm actually in it's a qualifier, and I'm just dealing my game. And I hear another tournament director talking to a player, and this player starts yelling, and he had been drinking. And, the tournament director actually got to the point where he had to, evict him. So, you're out of the tournament, you're out of the building. Player starts throwing his chips across the room. I had chips go right by my head. Other players we're all ducking, and what is going on here? And if you're ever up to running aces, and you ever talk to Chris Lucas, who's one of my tournament directors, he was the tournament director in question. You can ask him about that, and he can tell you all about it. But when you're sitting there dealing cards and, life's all good, blah, 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 and all of a sudden a chip goes flying by your head and you're like, what in God's name was that? And then you realize the guy's throwing more chips and, now everybody's ducking. That's pretty interesting. That was one of the weirdest things I've ever seen. So, yeah, I'll never forget that one.
That's pretty priceless.
Yeah.
I remember that one. There was that one famous Australian tournament. I'm glad I was not, or you were not, the tournament director for that one, where the guy got so angry he flipped up the table and all the chips went. It was like a final table and all the chips, and nobody knew whose chips were whose. And so you've never had that happen, though.
I've never had that happen, and I hope I don't have that happen.
Me too.
I've seen that video, and I've seen a couple others very similar to it, and I always think to myself, boy, what am I going to do if I ever have to deal with that? I'll just keep my fingers crossed and hope that, for the most part, I'm going to be lucky and only have to deal with Minnesota Nice, and we'll call it.
Well, and to kind of speaking of Minnesota, I thought I'd grab a couple of questions here,
Sure.
Get a little bit more local from the YouTube chat. Pipe Login wants to know, is there any chance the PLO tournament is coming back?
as a guy who loves Omaha, it's a fun game. It's a fascinating game. I think it's one of the future games of poker. And I hope more rec players start to play it. Are there plans? No. Would I like to? Yes. It's back to that whole, how do I get players to play things? How do I find the right balance? We rolled out a PLO tournament not that long ago, about 6 months ago or so. And unfortunately, we just didn't draw very well with it. We drew so poorly that we actually had to pull the plug. And I hated doing it because PLO is such a fun game and it's to my heart. And we're actually, for our cash game side, we're known as an Omaha house. We've got the biggest Omaha game in the state, probably the biggest cash game in the state, period. Between the two main card rooms is our Omaha game. And we get anywhere on Friday, Saturday, we'll get 3 to 4 of those games going in. And there's always $20,000 to $25,000 in play on each table. These are big games for a state that has a limit bet of $100. Yeah. So, I always thought, boy, if I run I was running $130, I think was the entry fee for a PLO event. And I was drawing 20 players and I was heartbroken. And from an operator perspective, it's got to make sense for us. 20 players, I'm not drawing enough people in. It's not really justifying me bringing in 6 dealers for. So how do I change that going forward? I am considering some options with that. I'm considering a once a month PLO event, and maybe I'll even do a smaller buy-in and keep it, make it friendly and try to get some rec players to play it. So if I make it, maybe I substitute, like when's the event that replaced that was an $80 just Texas Hold'em event. And what I'm thinking about maybe doing is the same night is doing an $80 once a month, doing an $80 PLO event. So it's still cheap. Players can still play. I might even stack up the chips a little bit because what I've experienced with PLO is, boy, chip stacks just don't make much of a difference. If you want action, if your player likes action, I would recommend finding some low limit PLO tournaments because, boy, you can throw chips around and have some fun. One of the other things I did before, and if I ever bring it back, I think I'll do again, is about every quarter I would do a beat the boss kind of style event with a PLO. And I would insert myself into the event or somebody else at Running Aces, one of the other tournament directors or managers. And we wouldn't be playing for prizes. We would just be playing. And if you knocked us out, we would give you an additional prize. So we were like a special bounty as an example, and we weren't eligible to win any prizes. The first time I ever did it, I actually made the final table, which was kind of sad. And I'm just like, guys, would somebody just knock me out? And eventually somebody did. And I think we gave them $200 worth of tournament entries, for future tournaments was the deal. So I think at some point we might do that again. And obviously that was a lot of fun. And, so you never say never. I'll say it that way.
So one other last local question. I don't know if you can speak to this or not, but I've seen some of the community talking about, well, looks like at the legislature here in Minnesota, they're talking about doing a sports betting bill. Maybe there will be some opportunities for poker. You just spoke to the fact that Minnesota only allows the kind of the spread limit rather than the no limit variety in the cash games. Do you think that and if you can't speak to this, I don't know what the regulatory rules are, and if you're not an expert on that, but do you think there's any hope that we're going to have some no limit games in Minnesota?
I think there's always hope for that. I can speak to it in part because the legislature keeps us in the dark. They don't tell us anything. We have lobbyists at the Capitol that obviously work a lot. I know there's been a lot of the big thing in the news is sports betting, and where that's at right now. It's right now what they're proposing doesn't include us. And I'm sure our lobbyists are working to get other things, and that could be bigger limits. So and it's been, geez, at least a dozen or 10 years, maybe 11 years since our last limit increase. So I would say at this point, we're probably maybe looking at something like that, but I don't have any specifics. So it's pure conjecture on my part at this point.
So we're entering the lightning round portion of the interview. We're getting on to the end here, John. I really appreciate your time. But we've got some members that, they don't get access to someone like you very often. So they're typing some questions in here.
Okay.
So I want to get one in from Charles Allen. Going back to the penalties idea. So what is the gradient for penalties? Is it entirely subjective, or is there sort of like a precedent for this kind of behavior gets this kind of penalties? Just speak to that a little bit in 30 words or less.
Sure. Basically So when it's just poker specifically related, penalties are pretty low level. 3 hands, 1 orbits, typically first level penalty kind of thing. Things that are egregious, verbal abuse, throwing things, anything like that is going to be escalated immediately. I've had to kick people out right away. So before they even get a penalty. So it does happen. You can obviously imagine the kind of thing that might drive something like that. Like a guy flipping a table over, as an example.
Right.
Probably going to be out of the tournament.
Yeah, that makes sense. So Joseph Foss is typing in here and wants to let you know that he's a big fan of the Beat the Boss tournament.
Okay.
And also, there's some suggestions here also from Evil Roy Slade about maybe doing like a no limit PLO mix, or having like a once a month mixed game tournament or something like that, to kind of spice things up and get people more involved in that side of it. I'm not sure it's a question so much as a recommendation.
I mean, we actually were running a crazy pineapple tournament for a little bit too. And I'm not opposed to anything like that. If I can drive some interest, if I've got 50, 60 players that want to come out for it, heck yeah, let's spread it. Personally, I'm a big fan of games like Raz. I would play Raz all day. So there's a great example. I mean, I'm sure there's people out there that like it just like I do. Maybe we've got some options there. That's easier said than done. I wish it was that simple. I've got to be able to show that I'm going to get the people for it. So that's always my roadblock. But if I can work something out, like I said, my wheels are always spinning.
Nice. Well, I'd encourage if you're listening to this and you want to try out some of our mixed games, Joseph makes a great point in the chat here that John Somsky runs our home game club here, and we do a different mixed game theme every month. So every month throughout the year, we'll be focusing on a different mixed game. We've got tutorials on how to play. We've got some practice games set up throughout the week or throughout the month, and then we have our monthly Player of the Year mixed game feature as well. So it is. I'm with you, John. I feel like it is the future of poker. The mixed game players, they're always having more fun. They're just having a better time at the table. There's no debate.
They do. They're action games. They move fast. I think it's just great. It's a great reminder for all of us that what makes poker cool. It's fun. It's a fun thing to do. It's fun to play. It's fun to splash chips around, make wagers. Nobody wants to sit there and sit for an hour and a half waiting for 2 cards that look really good. That's, I mean, that's what you end up thinking about. So it's always fun to try different things. And
Nice. Well, normally we do a little segment talking about some upcoming events at Running Aces as part of our show here.
Okay.
And we let people start typing the words food bank into the chat. So I'm just going to use you being here to do that a little bit. So first, I'm just going to say that if you're listening to this, it might surprise you, but someone might be suffering from food insecurity. Food insecurity is something that affects a lot of people in your own neighborhoods, I promise. The people that you might not expect need some help every once in a while. And so the best way to turn a great ROI on your own donation is to support your local food bank. So whether that's with your time, some non-perishable food items, or by writing them a check every once in a while, your local food bank is a great way to impact people in need in your community. So every week we do a draw here. If you're already a RecPoker Premium member and we call your name, you're going to win a month of Range Trainer Pro. if you are not yet a RecPoker Premium member, what are you doing? Why not? Have we mentioned that it's only $15 a month? Oh my God. But if you are not yet, you'll win a free month of RecPoker Premium membership here as well. So while people are taking some time to type the words food bank into the chat, John, can you tell us a little bit about what's coming up with MSPT? I know that's a big series. Everyone always has a great time at the MSPT stops. And what do you have in store for them? They're coming. It's right around the corner, I think.
It is.
March 23rd to April 2nd.
March 23rd. So Thursday, March 23rd will be the kickoff of the spring MSPT event at Running Aces. We got them back last year, and MSPT actually originated at Running Aces many, many, many years ago. And, last year we were able to get them back, and obviously, and we had two really, really good events last year, and Brian Molesky and myself were able to get it worked out again to come back this year, and I can't wait to have him back. His head tournament director, Jeremy Smith's just a fantastic guy. I love working with him. He brings a really good crew of people in, and they run just really, really good events. And I'm not ashamed to say that I copy a lot. I've learned a lot from him, from both of those guys. And matter of fact, our Pot of Gold tournament this weekend, I don't know if Brian or Jeremy will be listening to this, but I actually stole their pay structure and used it. So because one of the things we had received feedback on for our main events was our pay structure. And we've been, myself and another one of my tournament directors, Brian Soja, had been working on a pay structure many years ago. Got permission to try something different, and we didn't have anything built, so we just used MSPT's pay structure. So that's a good shout out to those guys. Hey, imitations and the sincerest form of flattery. So there you go.
Yes, sir.
But yeah, so they're going to be here March 23rd. The multi-day event, the first weekend, is a 360 regional. So he's been running. Last year he ran a couple mystery bounties for the 360 the first weekends. This year it's going to be a 360 regional. We're going to run the MSPT will run the mystery bounty in December when they come back to visit us then. So our event this last weekend was a 360, and we drew 772 entries for us alone. I expect that we're going to be well over 1,000 entries for this event. So come on out for sure. And it's the same spread for those 10 days. We've got another multi-day event that's kind of nice that starts on Sunday night, goes Sunday, Monday, Tuesday nights. So if you're one of those guys that has to work weekends, it's a great opportunity to maybe work a multi-day event in on a Sunday, Monday, Tuesday night. And then we've got the main event that starts the following weekend. That's $1,100. So, or $1,110. Yeah. So we'll welcome those guys back, and that's a lot of fun. And hopefully some of you guys can make it out. There's daily events everywhere. And hopefully there's the multi-day event that starts on Sunday night is $185. So pretty cheap multi-day event. He's got a 20,000 guarantee on it, but it goes way over that. I want to say the prize pool in it for last one ended up being 60 or 70,000 for it. So what a lot of value there. And like I said, they have such a great staff. To me, my only sadness with it is I can't play it. I got to sit there and work. So yes. I got to sit there and work, and I just get to watch, and that's my fun.
Well, and I will say, folks, if you're considering making the trip, they're Running Aces just north of the Twin Cities, and it is the Running Aces hotel, racetrack, and casino. Yep. I can speak from experience. You can get a very good night's sleep there, and you don't have to have spent the last 20 hours traveling from Toronto. It's very comfortable beds, great rooms, great staff. And they have a lot of fun there as well. I'm looking. So we're talking about doing another RecPoker weekend sometime in August or September, at the end of the summer. So people can start getting excited for that. But in the meantime, get on up there and have some fun with John and the rest of the crew over at Running Aces. If not for the MSPT, keep checking in with us. We'll be going over some of their upcoming events at the end of the show, week in and week out, because we love working with you guys. So keep it up, John. Is there anything else that you want to leave our listeners with before we roll on out of here?
No, Jim, thanks for obviously the work you're doing with us. And and for all of you guys, the work you do with the Rec Poker community, the Rec players are, it's lifeblood. It's absolutely the reason we stay open. So as a poker room, and so that's the only thing I want to take off with for me, for everybody that's listening is it's communities like this that keep the games going and keep driving interest. And when we have that Rec Poker weekend again, we'll be setting that up at some point. I hope I can see a bunch of people and they're all wearing the Rec Poker gear, and and we have a good time.
Yeah, it is a great time. It is a great time.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you, John. Don't be a stranger. We'll be talking again in the next little while. I got to have you back on where I want to talk about different legal jurisdictions. I want to talk about all this other stuff I thought we were going to get into today, but we got sidetracked with all these great questions. So we'll just have to do this again sometime real soon.
That sounds great.
All right, John. Have a great night. Thanks again.
Take care, guys. Thank you all.
All right. Well, we've had a few people entering the words food bank into the chat. John Somsky, why don't you lead us through the latest round of home game winners, and then Chris Jones will roll his magical nerdy die, and we'll see who's going home with a new membership here or there or somewhere. We're going to find out when.
Well, let's start off with the No Limit Hold'em Championship Series. Max Chaos 2112, Greg Clem won his very first No Limit Hold'em Championship Series.
What a boss.
Then for our nightly events, Gibber 3, Jim Gibson got his second nightly event for the year.
He's on a freaking roll too, by the way. I feel like we're shouting Jim Gibson out every time we get together on the show here. It's like it's the real Jim parade.
Well, actually, so this was on February 27th when he won this.
Yeah.
On February 26th, the previous week, that was the LPP event. He won.
Wow.
So this is really back-to-back events for him.
Wow, back to
And
back.
I'll also say that Greg Cloud, I gave him a ton of chips, so I feel partially responsible for that win.
See, we're touching lives.
Yeah,
Members
we are.
of the Wrecking
I
Crew,
feel it's all me. I'm helping everyone out. I'd like to be so generous with my chips.
Oh, way to go, the real Jim Gibson. Nicely done, Gibber.
Then we have Elvis 76 got his first nightly victory for the year.
Steve Krebs. Oh,
you're doxing him again.
I'm doxing him now. I don't know. Maybe it's a different.
You're supposed to, you just like follow John's lead, right? John says the username, and then he'll say the real name if it's real, and otherwise he just says the username, and then you're like, oh, you didn't say so I'm gonna say it.
This is like a pattern. I could probably eventually recognize this pattern and stick to it. Okay, I'll be back.
Jim just needs the Twitch delay to be put into place so that we can appropriately mute him.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, then we have Novice Monk, Christopher Hirsch, who won his very first event ever.
Nice.
For Rec Poker. I don't know that it was his first.
Well, congratulations. Welcome to the club.
I believe that's a fairly new player as well. So I think it was like within their first handful of tournaments, because I think they had only registered a couple of days before.
That's then like Dana Craven, her husband, Matt Craven, I think, joined a couple of weeks ago and then won his first tournament that he played with. Dana was giving me the gears on Twitter. She's like, it took me like 3 weeks before I won my first one. And then he comes in here and boom, right to the top. Hey, that's just how it goes sometimes. Mm-hmm. Nicely done.
Well, neither one of them really has much room to complain, because I think there are some players who have been playing far longer without winning one.
I think you're right. It's a tough field, man. It's a tough field. Yeah, Rob.
Then we have a big deal. Brian DeHaven got his second nightly victory for the year. Ship and Flip Wreck, Luke O'Driscoll got his first nightly victory for the year. That's
one of my favorite usernames, I think. Ship and Flip Wreck. It just feels like it's trying to get me to say something different. No, I like that. Nicely.
Then we have a really mad guy, got his second nightly victory for the year.
Another perennial winner.
Yep. Poker Geek Man, John Somsky won the daily mixed event. What? I don't know.
You just doxed him. What are you
doing? Way to go, John. You're often right in there in the mixed games. You're right in that final table. I know mixed games are something that you enjoy quite a bit. So congratulations.
Well, it's interesting. I was jealous the other week when Rob had won the mixed game and it was PLO, and PLO, of all of the mixed games, that's probably my weakest mixed game. I tend to overplay my hands a little bit there. So I was really happy when I was able to suck out on everyone and win despite my poor play.
You played very well at that final table, if I recall, because I was there for a short period of time, and you had a lot of chips and you were using them well.
Well, I was trying to, at least. And then, speak of the devil, Dana Craven, got her first international victory for the year.
There we go. Nice.
And John Lutzy got his first international victory for the year. And type login, Joseph Voss, won the LPP event. So he can contact Jim at rec.poker for his free month at Learn Pro Poker.
Oh, congratulations, Joseph. I love it when our active members, like Joseph's been a great friend in the YouTube chat here for a long time. Great to see him winning. And Sunday night is probably the best night to win, other than the first or second Wednesday of the month. That he says, I see him typing in the chat. He says, the laptop battery was about to die, so I started jamming all in on the final table.
He had also just cashed in that pot of gold at Running Aces that same day.
Same day. Wow.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. We had a little back and forth yesterday. I did make the final table of that one too. Didn't make it very far, but he had a huge chip stack, so he could easily just jam every hand and not worry about it, because he would come out ahead eventually anyway. So,
well, congratulations, Joseph. Or here, Joe, what do you got there?
You were talking about clever logins, or clever screen names. I really like type login.
Type login's a good one, isn't it? Yeah, he's one of the OGs around here. I've been seeing that for a long time. So yeah, as John Somsky says, Joseph sent me an email, Jim at rec.poker. You've won a free month of membership at Learn Pro Poker. You're going to love it. They have so much great stuff going on there. And like Running Aces, Learn Pro Poker and Ryan LaPlante, they've been a good friend of ours for a long time. They were our first real learning partner. And so it's a pleasure to be able to share their material with fantastic Rec Poker members like yourself. So yeah, send that email, Jim at rec.poker. And Chris, I see we've got a new addition. Dark Angel Donna is sneaking in under the wire to add her name to the mix here. So to avoid the bamboozling, we have to officially declare the order of the food bank draw here. So we're starting with Charles Allen, then the RRRCCC, Mary McCune, the one and only type login himself. Arnold Barron is back. And then Dark Angel brings us to 6.
So I got a traditional old 6-shooter.
Boring, conventional old die. Let's see how it works.
It's a 3.
It's a 3. That's Mary McCune. Mary is on a freaking roll. I think Mary's actually was our first ever Range Trainer Pro membership winner from a few weeks ago. So Mary, you know what to do. Send me that email, Jim at rec.poker. I know you and I have a conversation booked for a couple of weeks from now. So at the very least, we can figure out if you're enjoying Range Trainer Pro, maybe we can get an extra week in there, or maybe we can find another prize for you. Congratulations. And it just goes to show. Swing on by the Rec Poker Podcast, 7:30 Eastern on Mondays. You get a chance to win a prize for free at the end, and you never know. Yeah, we got Joe Rafter in the group as well. Hey, Joe, good to see you, man. We got a couple of these overseas members, Joe and Donna, jumping in, which we love to see. I hope you guys are.
Joe and Mary are regulars in the book study also.
Yep. There you go. Well, it goes to show these people, they get involved and then we see results. So God bless. It's great when winners start winning.
Given that Taylor isn't here, we should remind everyone that they can stay tuned on Thursday nights for Marek Madness. We had, 5x5 doing an incredible bracket buster, and 16th seed beat the first seed there. So, rigged. So everyone should stay tuned, and you can go to we're keeping track of the points. You can go over to the chat or to rec.poker/Marek and see where everyone's picks were and see where you're ending up there.
Yeah.
And we've got an amazing commentary duo. Our own Jim Reid will be joined by none other than Veronica Brill for the commentary this week on Thursday. So that'll be really fun. We've got some great matchups, so come tune in for that. And we're going to have, it sounds like we're going to have a special guest, awesome commentator pretty much every week. So this is going to be a fun March.
Yeah, it's exciting to see it coming together. So I will just take a moment to talk about how awesome this cool feature is. So Taylor Moss puts this on every year. It's our March Madness. We call it Marek Madness. There's a 16-player ladder bracket every Thursday night, starting at 9 o'clock Eastern, or on some of them it's 8:30 Eastern. So check the rec.poker website. We've got the calendar event set up for it. Go to twitch.tv/recpoker. And each week, we're going to have a different team providing live commentary over the cards up action on these matches as they play out. So last weekend was bracelet winner Lara Eisenberg with Taylor Moss. This week, it's going to be Veronica Brill and myself. Next week, we've got another bracelet winner, Chris Fox Wallace, joining us in the booth. Rob Gardner, a friend of the show, who you might know as the Poker Pastor. He was on the Forums edition a little while ago. He's going to be joining us for week 4. And then I cannot officially announce the week 5 on the final guest because it hasn't been quite nailed down. They've got some travel plans that we need to make official. But there will be an exciting guest on March 30th as well. So 5 Thursdays in March. There's 4 left at the time of this recording. Come on down to the Twitch channel, twitch.tv/RecPoker, and get involved and have some fun. It's going to be a lot of fun. And I can't wait to see, now that Somsky's goons have limited, what are they even going to get up to? John, have you thought about that? How are your goons doing, John? Because are they sad?
I really think it was that video that did it. It just totally demoralized me. Not only the fact that, I was leading, I had a huge ship lead, and then boom, he comes back right at the end. But it was the video. It just almost put me into tears, and I could not focus on the game.
Yeah, once I slipped the goons, like that. It was just that it was just you and me then. I didn't have to deal with all this nonsense. It felt very good.
And I believe if people want to see the video we are referring to, well, where can they find that, Chris?
Well, it's still up on YouTube.
Yes, it will be. It's on YouTube. If you go to the RecPoker YouTube channel, the main page has a bunch of playlists. If you just scroll down, one of them is the Marek Madness playlist, and it's currently at the top of that one. So you can see Marek Madness 2023 Week 1. And you can see all the violence, the Wrecking Crew on Wrecking Crew violence that happens here. Goons or no, there was a lot of good matches, and Lara and Taylor did a really cool, fun job in the booth as well. You could tell they got along great, and this is a fun group. I am so lucky to be a part of this fantastic group of poker wizards. We're just. I don't know, folks, if you are listening along and you think those guys seem like they're having a good time, there's a good reason for that. Come check us out. Come sign up for a free RecPoker account. All it takes is an email address and a smile, although we insist on both. And I'd love it if you dropped that $5 and gave our premium membership a try. If you use the code RecPoker at sign up, that first month is only $5 and it's $15 a month after that. Come join the fun. We have a great time. We'd like to be having a great time with you. So what else should we mention before we roll on out of here? I know we're going to get together If you're a premium member watching live in the YouTube chat, feel free to come and join our forums edition. We're going to be recording a couple episodes of the forums edition of the podcast right after this. You can find the link to join that on the homepage calendar. And otherwise, I'll just thank John Barrows for being a fantastic guest. Joe Coolis, Rob Washam, John Somsky, and Chris Jones for joining me in the booth, the Running Aces Hotel, Racetrack, and Casino, and everyone in the YouTube chat, but mostly you, the listeners. Thank you all so much, and we'll see you again